This is Talking Foreign Policy, a critical look at Canada's role abroad, and I'm Eve Engler. Today we're going to discuss a report in the Toronto Star yesterday, Tuesday, saying that the RCMP had opened an investigation under its Crimes Against Humanity and War Crimes program regarding Gaza. The assumption is they are looking into Canadians who've participated in Israel's genocide, which has spurred panic in pro-Zionist media outlets, while it's been welcomed by those who oppose apartheid and genocide. To discuss the Toronto Star report, the War Crimes Against Crime and Crimes Against Humanity Act, and the legal exceptionalism for Israel in Canada, we have lawyer Shane Martinez, who is a co-director of the International Center of Justice for Palestinians, the Canadian branch. First off, thanks for coming on Talking Foreign Policy, Shane. And can you give us some sort of detail the Star report and what the War Crimes and Crimes Against Humanity Act actually says?
Certainly, and thanks for having me on, Eve. So yesterday, the Star reported that the RCMP is supposedly investigating crimes related to what it terms the Israel-Hamas armed conflict. And the RCMP claims that it has this structural investigation in place that it started back in early 2024. And through the Crimes Against Humanity and War Crimes program, which is this multi-party collaborative effort between the RCMP, Department of Justice, Citizenship and Immigration Canada, and the CBSA. It is supposed to deny safe haven to war criminals and other people who are believed to be have been involved or complicit in what are oftentimes termed as reprehensible acts. It also claims to pursue accountability by sharing information with other states, or by exercising universal jurisdiction to prosecute offenders when they step foot on Canadian soil. Now, the Star's report also included a quote from the Department of Justice, and the official that they got the quote from explained that the RCMP can launch a structural investigation when there's evidence that war crimes, crimes against humanity, or genocide have occurred or are occurring anywhere in the world, and where there is a specific immigration community in Canada, either on a temporary, either temporarily resident in Canada or on a permanent basis, and that immigrant community is sufficiently large that the RCMP may gather the necessary evidence from it. Now, a common thread throughout the report by the Star, which was a correct thread, was that it drew comparisons between the RCMP's approach to war crimes in Gaza and how its quiet approach here is very different from how it has investigated alleged war crimes in Ukraine. And it specifically gave examples of the RCMP's hotline, its webpage, media outreach, and even signs that it has in airports, reaching out to potential victims and witnesses from the Ukraine versus the complete absence of anything similar in relation to its supposed investigation into what's happening in Gaza.
Yeah, and so people have kind of drawn that element out and gone a bit further with that. Some people on the, opponents of genocide, and pointed out that after 20 months of Israel's horrors in Gaza, there hasn't been any, prosecutions, and we're just hearing about this, at least a year or so after, more than a year after apparently the RCMP began this. What do you sort of make of the RCMP's lack of action? And also, I want a specific question. I read through the War Crimes Act, and it suggested to me that the Justice Minister needs to sort of okay a prosecution. So am I correct on that? And sort of bigger picture on are the skeptics right about is this actually just theater, or is the RCMP serious here?
Yeah, you're correct about the Crimes Against Humanity and War Crimes Act. Only the Attorney General can commence and continue a prosecution under that act, which is interesting because that prohibits private criminal prosecutions. That means that the people themselves cannot present evidence to a court have it deemed sufficient for charges to be laid, and then pursue those charges. Only the state can do it, which is somewhat convenient when we talk about countries that Canada is allied with. And I think people are right to be skeptical about what the RCMP is doing or is apparently not doing in these circumstances. We need to manage our expectations here. That would really be the most responsible approach because, after 20 months of what we see to be this, unmitigated carnage, there hasn't been so much as a word from the RCMP until the star comes knocking. And now we're implicitly being asked to trust that the RCMP is on the case, even though this quiet approach to its investigation, its refusal to provide even basic information, such as what led to the commencement of the investigation, that reflects its own history, actually, in my view, of complacency and complicity in some ways with the Israeli military. The RCMP has taken part in active training maneuvers with the Israeli armed forces, including its ongoing participation in Operation Proteus, which seeks to co-opt security efforts of the Palestinian Authority into the larger Israeli security apparatus. Also in 2020 and 2021, there was extensive evidence that was filed with the RCMP as part of a campaign that was led by a number of organizations, which included Independent Jewish Voices and Just Peace Advocates, about illegal Israeli military recruitment that was happening in Canada. And although that kind of recruitment is a crime under the Foreign Enlistment Act, the RCMP refused to lay charges against those who were recruiting volunteers to join up with the Israeli military. The RCMP also works closely with Ontario's Hate Crime and Extremism Investigative Team, which is a police network in the province that has carried out what is, in many respects, unprecedented surveillance and criminalization of Palestine solidarity activists since October 2023. So I think we need to look at the present situation in this particular context. And this reality, when we compare it with the purported purpose behind the RCMP's structural investigation into what's happening in Gaza. And when we look at its past its past conduct in other contexts, it really reveals a number of apparent contradictions, and questions that arise as well. So, for example, if an investigation has been underway for, a year now, why is there zero public outreach to Palestinians in Canada who survived the genocide and escaped Israel's bombardment of Gaza and managed to get here? If an investigation has been underway for a year, why are individuals alleged to be complicit with war crimes in Gaza able to freely enter and leave Canada as they please? And if an investigation has been underway for this amount of time, why is the RCMP still not doing anything whatsoever to stop illegal Israeli military recruitment happening right here in Canada? So we've got these, vague statements like the ones that the RCMP and the Department of Justice made to the Star, and those on their own are really little more than window dressing. And I would suggest that the public would be right not to accept them at face value. There's no reason for the public to take the RCMP at its word in this instance, and there's really every reason to continue demanding, clear and decisive action for accountability.
Yeah, that gets to the kind of the broader question that includes the RCMP, which you've mentioned, this whole question of legal exceptionalism for Israel and Canada. And the Foreign Enlistment Act that you refer to, 2020, 2021, they refused, despite thousands of people emailing them, despite all kinds of prominent people signing this public letter, despite a whole formal complaint with all kinds of evidence of violating of the Foreign Enlistment Act that was taking place, delivered to them. They basically ignored it. And so, yeah, you've instigated a number of cases dealing with Israel, Canadian complicity, Foreign Enlistment Act. I guess, yeah, just sort of more generally, can you maybe a bit of a refresher for some people who maybe forgotten some of the details of this legal exceptionalism for Israel and Canada that you've seen and been part of combating?
Sure. Yeah. And it seems with each passing month, there's just more and more to unpack where it comes to legal exceptionalism where Israel is concerned. So I'll kind of try to walk through it. Uh, it really, this idea of legal exceptionalism, it defines Canada's approach to the Israeli armed forces. And there's numerous examples, but again, I think we kind of have to start with context first. And the context is essential to really clarify how pronounced the exceptionalism is. What we know is that the Israeli military, it's under investigation by the prosecutor of the ICC for war crimes and crimes against humanity dating back to June of 2014. We also know that Israel's former defense minister, Yoav Gallant, who was at the helm between 2022 and 2024, is wanted by the ICC for a number of different war crimes, including using starvation as a method of warfare, directing attacks against civilian populations, murder, persecution. And as your viewers are likely aware, as of last week, over 56,000 Palestinians have been killed in Gaza since October 2023, many of whom are children. And more than 100 children were killed in just the week of May 12th. And now, when we look at UN stats as well, so for those who may be doubting information coming out of Gaza, we want to look at information coming from the UN. At least 94% of all the hospitals in Gaza are damaged or destroyed. Nearly 88% of schools have been damaged and destroyed. We've got widespread arbitrary detentions, typically of men and boys, allegations of torture and egregious abuse in custody, starvation still used as a weapon. And after 20 months of Israeli soldiers carrying this out, with crimes being published across social media, and 20 months of the effects of what is being broadcast, witnessed by us in real time, with children literally shredded and crushed before our eyes, there has been no intervention by Canada whatsoever to restrain Israel. And still, after all this, we have statements by Prime Minister Carney last month alluding to the possibility of sanctions. This is after 20 months of these crimes occurring. The possibility of sanctions now is where we're at. Or we have Foreign Affairs Minister Anita Anand, summoning the Israeli ambassador. Finally, after shots were fired near a diplomatic delegation that had some Canadians in it, finally we've gotten to that stage. All of the death and the carnage and the injuries and the destruction was not enough to get us there. And we have Canada as a signatory to the Rome Statute. And Canada is more than that, though. It's actually the first country to adopt a comprehensive legislative framework to implement the Rome Statute into Canadian law. And, Canada has agreed to pursue the implementation of the principle of responsibility to protect. This is a very important principle in international law. It most recently reiterated its commitment to this in 2021, and it acknowledged that it has the responsibility to use appropriate diplomatic, humanitarian, and other peaceful means to help protect populations from genocide. It's a contracting party to the Genocide Convention, which means that it has an obligation to take all reasonable measures within its power to prevent genocide. But despite all of this, Canada continues to allow arms exports destined for Israel, whether it sends them there directly or through a third country like the United States. It also purchases arms from Israel, such as its Spike missile purchase that happened, was facilitated during the genocide in Gaza. It continues to engage in extensive and high-level military cooperation with Israel through the Canada-Israel Strategic Partnership. It allows Israel's largest weapons manufacturers to enter Canada and sell their products at arms shows, such as the CanSec conference that happened in Ottawa last week. It continues to be reluctant to take meaningful action to shut down the Canadian Charity to Israeli Military Pipeline, allowing organizations with charitable status here to funnel millions upon millions of dollars a year over to Israel to benefit its Ministry of Defense. And all of this together, it illustrates how Canada refuses to uphold the law where the Israeli military is concerned. It's as though it operates in a complete silo where accountability does not exist. And Canada has proven time and time again that it will not voluntarily do anything where the Israeli military is concerned, and that it only acts when it is forced to do so by mass mobilizations and pressure campaigns. And I would say, really, that's, all the more reason for people to be skeptical of these assurances by the RCMP and demand really meaningful action and accountability.
Yeah, well, let's hope this is a little bit of a chipping away at the legal exceptionalism. I'm of the opinion if the Canadian government, the Canadian officials just upheld the Foreign Enlistment Act, War Crimes, Crimes Against Humanity Act, Export-Import Act around arms deliveries to human rights violators, and upheld Canada Revenue Agency rules around supporting foreign militaries, West Bank settlements, racist organizations. That would go a long way into lessening Canadian complicity in Palestinian dispossession. So, just in other words, upholding Canadian law beyond moving towards sanction and other diplomatic measures to punish Israel. Just upholding Canadian law would be a big step forward. But thanks a lot for coming on talking foreign policy, and let's hope that this RCMP move is serious and not just theater. Thanks a lot for coming on, Shane.
Thank you, Eve. Appreciate it.